Hello and welcome to the Voice of TOD. I'm Tom, and in this video I'm going to give you my thoughts on Masters of the Universe Revelation, the 2021 animated Netflix show hoping to rejuvenate the franchise and please new and old fans alike. There will be spoilers in this one because they're just too big to not talk about in a review like this. So we're going to be looking at Season 1, Part 1, the first 5 episodes, and currently the only episodes available on Netflix. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the post-show aftermath thing that they did with Kevin Smith, with one of the higher-ups from Mattel, and Tiffany Smith, and a load of the actors who phoned in from wherever they are in the world, because there's something that really got my back up in that show. We'll get to that, and yeah. But really, the Aftershow sums up how I think the writers wanted to treat this rendition of He-Man. I say He-Man because I mean He-Man, even though he isn't mentioned in the title. But first we have a little bit of admin to cover as usual. The brains behind this show is Kevin Smith, a director I admire for doing his own thing. With a writing team made up of Smith himself, Dia Mishra, Mark Bernardin, again I'm a fan of his, Tim Sheridan and Eric Carrasco. The show is a continuation, that's key, a continuation of the 1983 Filmation series He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. That's the first clue in the title change, and it's based on the Mattel toy line that has been running for almost 40 years. The star-studded voice cast includes Chris Wood as Prince Adam / He-Man, Sarah Michelle Gellar as Teela, Mark Hamill, the legendary Mark Hamill, the Skeletor, Lena Headey as Evil Lynn, Liam Cunningham as Man-at-Arms / Duncan, and features Justin Long, Dennis Haysbert, Kevin Conroy, Henry Rollins, Jason Mewes, the great Alan Oppenheimer, as well as many, many more. The IMDb synopsis: the war for Eternia begins again in what may be the final battle between He-Man and Skeletor. A new animated series from writer-director Kevin Smith. Now, anybody who saw my trailer reaction will know that He-Man and the Masters of the Universe was a huge part in my childhood, and I wouldn't say that I'm a super fan. And I don't really have any idea of the lore and all the storied history of the characters outside of the cartoon I watched as a kid, but I was really excited for this. And the trailer, the first trailer, really got me going. It looked basically like everything I wanted it to be. So I sat down on Friday night and I started with episode 1, The Power of Grayskull. The opening recap was excellent, voiced by Liam Cunningham. A wonderful older animation style intro let viewers in on the basic idea of Masters of the Universe and a couple of extra details. I have to say I was really buying into it from that point. It really set up that old 80s feel that I wanted from this, but in a modern way. And then we twisted into the new animation. And we do get a little bit of a bait and switch right at the start. Like I said, there will be spoilers, as Skeletor launches a sneak attack on Castle Grayskull, and the sorceress is trapped inside. It's a great opening, and our heroes are pulled away from Teela's celebration at reaching the rank of Man-at-Arms. Another red flag, because my understanding at this point in the episode, bearing in mind we're like 2 minutes in, Duncan is still Man-at-Arms, so there is now 2 Man-at-Arms. Whatever. The animation, the action, the soundtrack, it's all incredible. Throughout the entire thing, I cannot fault all 5 episodes, I cannot fault the animation. It's so smooth, it's beautiful, the action is really well done. And the Bear McCready soundtrack, who also did Battlestar Galactica and so many other things, is incredible. Just fantastic. I think actually the music is probably the best part of this. It's wonderful. But into episode 1, all of those things were just clicking nicely, everything was working, and as battle is joined, it's everything that really I wanted to see as a 30-something-year-old fan of the kids' TV show from the 80s. Each of our heroes gets a moment going toe-to-toe with an enemy of equal worth. Man at Arms against Robo He-Man, who I think is called Faker. I think they actually do call this one Faker as well, so it ties into the lore. Teela versus Evil Lyn, and He-Man using one punch to knock down an entire group of enemies before taking on Skeletor in spectacular fashion. He's the strongest man in the universe. Of course he can just punch the ground and kill a million people. Brilliant, it's everything you want. But as Skeletor makes it to the heart of Grayskull, Mossman appears and is brutally burned alive by Skeletor. This is not your kid's He-Man. This has evolved, and this does have very dark moments in it. Again, something that I like, something I appreciate being an adult now. And He-Man, driven by rage, plunges his sword through Skeletor and into an ancient lock that opens up to reveal an orb of power of something, of all Eternia, something about magic. Skeletor uses his last strength to smash the orb, and He-Man calls the power of Grayskull to trap the magical blast, saving all of Eternia, his friends. Yes, that includes Teela, a point I'm making on purpose, but both He-Man and Skeletor are killed in the process. It's an epic 20 minutes, and I was totally locked in until the final scene of episode 1, when Man at Arms reveals to King Randor and Queen Marlena, Prince Adam's parents and the rulers of Eternia, that He-Man has been killed. Marlena tells her husband that He-Man was actually their son, something that only a handful of people knew, and that is something that dates way back to the 80s. And the king kicks off in grief. You'd understand his only son has just been killed. And the shock revelation that his son was He-Man. It makes sense. He banishes Man at Arms for his failure in keeping his son alive, who graciously accepts the punishment. And this is where everything falls apart. Because Teela, Man at Arms Teela, who has just been praised for being the greatest warrior in all of the kingdom, whatever, she kicks off, abandoning the king, the queen, her surrogate father, the vows she made to protect the kingdom, because everybody lied to her about He-Man and it's not fair. And that's where we end episode 1. I'm going to blast through the rest of it because you probably know where this is going now. The writing is very much on the wall, and this show is all about Teela being mad at the people in her life and her new hatred for everything magic because tech is so much better. She teams up with Andra, a nobody from the comics who tries to replace Man at Arms as the techspert of the show, and goes off hunting for treasure. She meets a disguised Evil Lyn, and they team up to find the two halves of the power sword and reforge them to restore magic back to Eternia, before it's too late and the entire galaxy is destroyed. There is a way that they could have done this story. I think I'll touch on that later. I think we'll come back to that thought. Along the journey, we meet up with Duncan, Orko, Cringer, Roboto, the Sorceress, Beastman, Merman, Triclops, who's basically trying to be Skeletor but using tech instead of magic. And it really becomes a who's who, quick appearance, can nod to the lore, which probably does work if you're well versed in it, I'll be honest. And if you take Teela out of the equation, it actually works very well as a story. It feels close enough to me to the original that I remember, and following on from the events of the first episode, again removing Teela's arc, everybody feels quite organic to where they would be after such a loss. Duncan shines in every scene he's in, and it's clear that the writers wanted to keep him as a loving and proud father to Teela, and Cunningham delivers. I also loved Evil Lyn's journey in the series. We get to see much more of her, and she's making connections with Teela, some very strong moments with Orko, in some very surprising ways. Again, Headley is a perfect casting for this. Orko 2 is the absolutely pointless, really annoying sidekick from the 80s. He's not as annoying as he used to be, and he has his own moments that really worked for the character, and they really change his view on the world with all the events that move on. He's voiced by Griffin Newman, and I can't fault him at all. The big problem is Teela, and it's not Sarah Michelle Gellar. She does a good enough job. Granted, a lot of this was filmed in their homes, in makeshift recording studios through the pandemic. I can't really speak for the quality, the lines are delivered clearly enough. I don't think it's her fault, but her view on the world post episode 1 and how she deals with the situation just makes no sense whatsoever. Especially after she's been hailed as an excellent tactician, warrior, generally perfect human being, or dare I say Mary Sue of this series. I genuinely see her as Rey from The Last Jedi in this show. That's the bar that they set for Teela. And if that's what they wanted, they really delivered. I'll give them that. Basically, the quest is to reclaim the two halves of the Power Sword. We have to visit Subternia, the land of the dead, and Preternia, the land of heroes, the Hall of Heroes. So we go to Subternia first, and I did actually quite enjoy Teela in this. The group is split up into various different situations, so Scareglow, the king of the dead, can feed on their fear, and he himself faces off against Teela, using a makeshift sort of imagined He-Man to fight her, who absolutely bests her. It makes perfect sense. Until she gets a grip on her fear. Again, it's a hero's moment, and she earns it. I will say that she earns it. It's one of the few moments we actually get some sort of hero's journey for the character. Another incredible action sequence as well, as she's fighting off against He-Man and then herself. I really liked it. But throughout this entire show, there are so many references about Teela being so powerful that I will touch on that later as well. After a little scuffle and Orko sacrificing himself as they escape Scareglow, the remaining heroes enter Preternia and come face to face with Prince Adam, who just straight away gives them the second half of the Power Sword. Which leads us into the last episode, which does actually have promise. It's very much Prince Adam and Teela mixing with the previous champions of Eternia, including King Grayskull, while the Power Sword is being reforged. I do quite like the bulk of this episode. It has some nice moments. It has some really humbling moments of why all of the heroes are in this land of heroes in their hero form. Like, King Grayskull is King Grayskull, for instance, the big, muscular defender of Eternia that was. But Prince Adam chose to be Prince Adam instead of being He-Man. It shows that level of kind of humbleness that I think he's always had, and he hasn't always abused He-Man's power. He doesn't go out to beat people up and kill people. He just defends the realm. So I quite like that. That really works for me, and I think we don't get much of him, but I think Prince Adam works for me mostly in this show when he's there. The problem is that he is hardly there. The problem is that He-Man is missing from the title sequence, or the title of the show, I mean. He's also missing from the majority of this because he's been killed in episode 1. We get the odd flashback of him working with Teela. It works. It does work, it feels organic, it feels natural, it feels like they're working as a team and they see each other as equals, even though we know He-Man's better. He's not the kind of guy to go, well, I'm stronger than you because I'm He-Man, kind of thing. I liked the flashbacks. They really work. But they're just flashbacks. Anyway, the sword is reforged, and Roboto is killed in the process, so that's 2 heroes down. But with the blade reforged and very little time to grieve, Teela and the remaining heroes head back to Eternia. Prince Adam chooses to give up his place among his peers and travel back to Eternia with them to fix the problems following his sacrifice. Again, this is a choice that I can see Prince Adam making. It's a selfless hero putting himself in the line of fire to do what's right and protect the realm that he loves. It's a very heroic choice. And again, we build up to an epic moment. He-Man returning, or Prince Adam, but you know what I mean. Prince Adam returning and calling on the power of Grayskull to transform into He-Man, to bring magic back to the world, to save Eternia. And the writers chose to completely sully the moment by having Skeletor jump out of an orb and stab Prince Adam in the back. It's not even well thought out. It's a really cheap scene. All we've been wanting for 4 episodes of this is for He-Man to return, our hero. Raise the sword of power. Say the magic words, by the power of Grayskull, I have the power. Transform into He-Man. And we don't get it. I do actually like that Evil Lyn instantly falls in line with Skeletor. And Beastman as well. It's like, yeah, he has a power over them. But with Prince Adam, at this point, lying, bleeding, but I'm not going to say dead. You don't actually see him die in the show. Skeletor just picks up the power sword, summons the power of Grayskull, and becomes the master of the universe. And we fade to credits. This is the Teela Show, which I wouldn't have a problem with. There is a way that you could have done it if you have Teela having witnessed everything, having learned He-Man's true identity. If you had her go, I'm not accepting this fate. He can't be gone. Magic is fading. I need to put this right. She goes hunting for the 2 parts of the sword to find He-Man. I believe she is in love with Prince Adam. It's loosely referenced. It's never really been a solid thing in the comics or the show or anything that I'm aware of, but they definitely have that connection. So if they'd have used her grief and her refusal that He-Man and Prince Adam are gone to push her through, the flashbacks would have made more sense. The whole journey would have made more sense. Use her belief and love for He-Man and her belief that magic will bring him back, instead of having her just pissed off at everything and being perfect at doing everything that He-Man did, basically, and not having a hissy fit and abandoning her friends. I think it would have made for a better journey for both Teela and much more rewarding when He-Man comes back. I don't understand. I don't understand why they just went all Rian Johnson and ruined the character. You don't take a beloved character, a character that fans of a franchise for almost 40 years, this is both Masters of the Universe and Star Wars, and ruin it. That's not how you make money. I don't understand the writer's thought process for this. And the bit that really pissed me off was the Aftershow, which I don't recommend you watch. But we open with a little bit of banter between the 3 presenters, and Kevin Smith's one of them, and you know, it's okay, go watch it, we're going to talk spoilers, blah blah blah, let's give them a moment. Straight away, as soon as the spoilery bit's done and they can get in and they can talk about the entire thing, Kevin Smith gleefully exclaims, this is a quote, I checked the closed captions, "Can you believe that we killed Prince Adam twice, man. Bam, twice. Not just once. Where you're like, that was crazy. Crazy courageous to do it in episode 1. We did it in episode 5 as well. Nuts. Is it crazy courageous to kill off the hero and main character of a franchise twice in less than an hour and a half? Doing it in the first episode and setting up this journey to find He-Man totally works, if done right. But doing it at the end because you think it's funny? No. No. It's fucking stupid. Again, I want to state that Kevin Smith is someone I like. I really enjoyed Tusk. I really enjoyed Red State, Dogma, and Yoga Hoses is terrible, but it's a joy to watch. He also spent the entire time leading up to this show saying how it was all about He-Man and it was for the fans. And basically that quote is a big fuck you to anybody who's come into this with any of the history, any of the baggage, any of the childhood memories. This is a real bad blow to a franchise that is basically an advert to sell toys. Do you really think killing the main character is going to sell you a load of He-Man toys? You think anybody wants to buy a self-righteous Teela toy? It sounds very much like Kevin Smith had a crazy idea to mix it up, and nobody at Mattel would actually stand up and say no. They just went along with it. Netflix don't care. It's not a Netflix property. This show had so much promise. That first trailer. I'm lucky. As a kid I was a huge He-Man fan, but that isn't something that I've carried into later life with any more than it just being a fond memory. So while this almost hour and a half new series is pretty bad, I can separate it from my memories and I can take the bits that I like, the action sequences, the animation, the soundtrack, the casting. That doesn't mean that there aren't severe repercussions if part 2 doesn't address all these issues properly and actually have a little bit of fan service in it. We could be looking at a huge rift when part 2 drops, and it is basically the Teela Show part 2. And let's touch on where Teela's going to go, because it felt very much like she was going to be the one wielding the power sword. And there's dialogue from the sorceress from Scareglow saying how great she is. So is Teela going to be the hero that beats all-powerful Skeletor and takes up the mantle as what, She-Woman? It's just... it's really badly written. That's the problem here. It's a bad idea that nobody thought to think about twice. Let me be clear. Again, I have no problem with this being a Teela show if Prince Adam and He-Man are treated with the reverence that the character deserves. Instead, they just used him as a ploy to get people to watch this and laughed all the way to the bank. This type of bullshit needs to stop, and the creators of these shows need to be a little bit more honest, because right now Kevin Smith looks like a snake oil salesman to all the promises he made in the lead up to this show. I'd love to say part 2 will be worth the wait, but at this point I think we know that this has burned more than its fair share of the old fans. There will be people who enjoyed this, there will be newcomers who enjoyed this who don't know the law. That's fine. I hope they do enjoy it. I hope that somebody gets some enjoyment out of this. But from my view, as a fan, way back in my childhood, this is not He-Man. And this is not what I wanted. It almost was. For a brief moment, we got what I wanted. And it was snatched away. Not once, but twice. As always, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.